Greetings and Happy New Year, and welcome to the first Richard's Rock Rambles of 2022. If you can believe that. I mean, where has the last year gone? It's crazy. It's like you just get to January, then whoops, you're in December, and then it's another year. So I hope everybody's doing okay out there, and that you've had a good festive season. And if you, like myself, have managed to add a little to yourself, it's going to be a tough year. So we're going to carry on looking at our live albums, and today we're going to look at a band from Ireland, and for me, one of the best live albums that were ever recorded. There's always been a bit of contention, a bone of contention about this album, whether it's actually live or if it was doctored in the studio. It's not really live. But the fact of the matter remains that most live albums from the 70s, in fact the 80s as well, had some kind of doctoring in the studio, mixing things, fixing up the vocals, fixing up the guitar. So it's a little bit unfair. I mean, for me, it's still a great live album. It wasn't at one place. They took it from different concerts over a number of years, 76, 77, and 78, I think it was released. So they took the best tracks, or the best sounding tracks from those concerts, and they put it into one album. A double album originally, double vinyl. And we're talking about Thin Lizzy. Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous. Excellent album, as I said, one of the best live albums ever. And it really captures Thin Lizzy at that time with their strongest lineup. Scott Gorham on guitar, Brian Robertson on guitar, Brian Downey on drums, and of course the late great Phil Lynott on bass and vocals, that great lyricist, the great bass player, iconic guy in rock, and for me, right up there with people like Hendrix and Jim Morrison and people like that. He was a great frontman. He ran a tight ship. Problem was with Phil towards the end, like Jimmy, he couldn't say no to the drugs, and unfortunately got, stuck with heroin or what have you, and that was that. Died at a very young age, in his 30s, I think. So just a great live album. It was recorded, as I said, at various locations between 76 and 78. And it was released on the 2nd of June, 1978. And it was produced by Tony Visconti, who did a few albums with the band, in fact. I think he'd been involved with Jailbreak and I think Fighting as well, if I'm not mistaken. And the band also was helped with the production. So it's you have to get a band's input in it, especially with a live album, because they say, like, this sounded good on that night. And I would imagine there were loads of tapes that they had to get through from the different concerts. So, like I said, Phil Lynott on bass and vocals, Scott Gorham lead guitar, backing vocals, Brian Robertson lead guitar and backing vocals. So you had all those backing vocals as well, which is great in a band just to fill things out. Brian Downey, that great drummer on drums and percussion. And then there were a few guest musicians which appear on this double live album. A gentleman by the name of John Earl from the Graham Parker Band, and he was on sax. I think he plays on one track. Dancing in the Moonlight, I think he plays on that track. Excellent sax player. And then also Huey Lewis, whose name should be familiar to many of you guys out there. He plays harmonica on the album. He was a friend of Phil and the band. I think Huey Lewis at the time was touring at the same time, and they sort of hooked up, and Phil asked him, do you want to come play on the album, or do you want to come play at a concert? And his track was chosen for this album. So the album got up to number 2 in the UK album charts, which isn't too shabby, and it went double platinum in the UK, which is really good. I don't know how well it did in the US. I don't think it did that well in the US. Thin Lizzy were another one of those bands that just couldn't crack the States. I mean, they did tour there, but they were always beset with all sorts of problems. For me, Thin Lizzy's a band like UFO and Golden Earring. They could have been so much bigger than what they were. It's almost a what-if band. What if Phil hadn't got involved with drugs? What if Brian Robertson, didn't get into that bar fight, and then they had to change the lineup for the concerts. He got into a bar fight and he stuffed his hand up, and they had to get Gary Moore in at the last minute. All sorts of problems with this band. And you kind of wonder, if those things hadn't happened, would they have been able to take that next step, especially in the States, where that was the market that you had to crack to really make it. Yeah, really sad. But in any case, let's have a look at the album with that. I just love this cover. This just screams live to me. You can see that old Phil with his bass. He always had that shiny sort of scratch plate where they would shine at the lights. And that's the back of the CD. This is a remastered version, by the way, and this was released on the Vertigo label originally, and Mercury Records. It's so much better live. I can show you why. If you look on the inside here, you'll see all these little photographs of the live. It's so much better with a vinyl because you can get, I don't know how much you can see there. Different shots of the band live, and they were a great live band. Phil Lynott had such a rapport with the audience. You know, he was a really likable guy, and the band was super tight at the time of this recording. Right, so what are the tracks on here? Jailbreak, of course, that was a huge hit for them. That came off the album Jailbreak, which is probably the biggest selling studio album. Then we go into Emerald, which has got that great Irish feel to it. You know, he was very connected to his Irish roots, Phil Lynott, and a lot of his writing was about Ireland and the mystical side of things. And none more so than Emerald, with some great guitar work from both Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson. Of course, they were known for that dual guitar thing, which had been started by bands like Wishbone Ash, but I think Thin Lizzy just took it to a different level, and that would be copied by bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, etc., etc. So that was the second track. Then we get into the track Southbound, slightly slower, great lyrics as well. Rosalie, which was a Bob Seger track, which Thin Lizzy made their own. I mean, a much better version, I think, into Cowgirl Song. Then you had Dancing in the Moonlight with those great lyrics from Phil. And then you had the Graham Parker Band guy doing his sax solo. Just a great song. He was a great songwriter, Phil Lynott. You know, apart from being a really good bass player and a great frontman. Then we had the track Massacre, which is a slightly heavier track. Still in Love with You, sorry. And there's two versions of that. There's a slow version and a fast version. I think on this album, on the live stuff here, you got that slow version. Brilliant track. Johnny the Fox meets Jimmy the Weed, which may or may not be a song about drugs. Cowboy song, The Boys Are Back in Town. That was the other big hit, also from Jailbreak. Don't Believe a Word. Warriors. Are You Ready, which is a really up-tempo rocker. Also connecting with the audience once again. A lot of call and response stuff with the audience on this live album, which is great. And then you get to my favorite track, Suicide. And that was from the album Fighting. And I just love the lead breaks in there, the trade-off between Brian Robertson and Scott Gorham. Some superb lead guitar playing. And they both played Les Pauls, if memory serves. Then we get into a track called Shalala, which is a sort of a rock and roll kind of thing. Baby Drives Me Crazy, same thing. And then they end it all off with another one of their big hits, the early hits, The Rocker. So there we have it. Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous. Absolute gem. If you don't have this in your collection, especially amongst live albums, it's a must-have. It just encompasses all you want to hear from a live album. The to and fro with the audience, like I said, the great lead breaks, the tight rhythm section, and yet that whole vibe. It's almost like you're there at the concert. That's what I love about this album. And then eventually, because for many years there was a video available, Live and Dangerous, and eventually back in, I think this was the early 2000s or late 2007, I think this came out. They released this on DVD. It was available on video, but I got to say, I was a bit disappointed with this release. The sound could have been better, considering they had the tapes and everything. They could have, really doctored it up. And also the picture quality is not that great, but I suppose it was done on VHS originally, and there's only so much you can do with VHS. Even if you stick it onto Blu-ray, it's not going to make much difference. But it was great to see this. I remember watching this when it first came out on video. And here you get to see the great interaction between the guys on stage. There's a cool drum solo from Brian Downey as well. Excellent drummer, very underrated. And there's actually a few extras on here as well. There's a Sight and Sound in concert, and that was from 1983. Then there's a Top of the Pops, the different times that they were Top of the Pops. You know, that show, that great English show, where everything was mimed, of course, which was always a sticking point for me. There's a few interviews with Brian Downey, Brian Robertson, and Scott Gorham. And then there's a bonus live CD, live from Derby in 1975. And that would have been, I think, around the time of Fighting. So that's also one to check out, the DVD version of Live and Dangerous. There we go. For me, the best band to come out of Ireland. One of the best artists, along with people like Rory Gallagher. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous. So there we go. Next time around, we're going to have a look at another great live album going all the way back to 1970. And probably one of the rawest live albums you will ever hear. There was no mixing done. What you heard was actually how the concert was. Lots of crowd noise. Really raw. Talking about Grand Funk's first live album, just called Live. Have a great week, guys. Look after yourselves out there in the craziness of this COVID, which seems to go on and on and on. And if you are going out or on the road, take it easy. Get back safe. I'll catch you soon. Cheers.